Okay, I believe we're live. I'm just going to wait for a confirmation in the chat that we are in fact live. There's about a 4 or 5 second delay. Um, so I'm just going to do the old hello, can you hear me? Like Tracy Chapman. Let me give it 4 seconds. You should be able to see me there in the bottom corner of your screen. I'm getting a thumbs up from beside me here. Nobody from the chat is actually talking. That it would be useful. Warren, can you hear me well through this? Excellent. Okay, Grant. So we'll begin then, I suppose. Okay. So we've got our hands washed. Our keyboard is sterilized. With a can of Irish beer. Warren, my assistant, has been so good to supply me with some scampi fries as well. And we have a live studio audience here as well. I've got 4 or 5 people around me. 4. I'm the 5th, I suppose. So we got live. Come on, let's hear some noise from the studio audience. So we're all sitting here in the living room in our cheap imitation of a pub, but we're doing our best. So I think most of the people watching this are probably my friends. So there's about 30-40s watching. That's grand with me. I didn't want the thousands that were promised. Tom Dunn might be listening. He was supposed to, well, maybe he turned up, maybe he didn't. But for those of you that don't know me, I'm John Garrity. I run a website called Publin.ie. I usually do articles about pubs, kind of just tripe about where's a nice beer garden, where you can get a good fish and chips, all that kind of stuff. But these are extenuating circumstances, and I'll go mad at home if I don't talk about pubs, even if I can't go to them. So I'm not really sure how it's going to go tonight or what the format is. I have a rough outline of how I think it'll go, but sure, we'll give it a go. The idea is kind of somewhere between Noel's House Party and like a BBC4 documentary series. So what could go wrong? It's kind of like my equivalent for the pub trade of Leo Varadkar's speech the other night, except that I'm just in my living room and I could be wearing my PJs under here. But I'm kind of doing this as a bit of a rallying call for people to go to pubs when this is all over and it's safe to go. So it's kind of a time when society's going through a lot of change, and we're kind of finding other ways to interact and come together. But we shouldn't lose sight of what we should be kind of aspiring to in the future, and the kind of the aspects of community to draw us closer and give us so much enjoyment. The pub itself is something kind of never needed more, but we've had to give it up temporarily for the greater good. We've seen people come together in the last week, and we're going to see it more in the next while. And we're kind of doing it in a way that transcends our social class, our geography, our age, our tastes. And it's my opinion that we can kind of do this really naturally in Ireland because we've had years of experience of doing it. Coming together to create shared experiences in pubs around the country and in Dublin City. It's in these social spaces that we learn a lot about ourselves and others. We learn how to discuss topics, how to drop topics, how to respect the arguments and ideas of others, and how to kind of explore our own thoughts amongst our friends. So obviously nothing can replace the Irish pub experience. It's hard enough to, in a physical terms, to kind of replicate it in Europe, in the US and abroad. So kind of a digital copy like this is a poor copy. But it's worth kind of keeping alive our love for the institution of the Irish pub, so that the community that we're building up online in the next few weeks will be rewarded with a trip to somewhere where we can kind of physically embrace and discuss all that's transpired over the last while. And the best place we know how to do that is the pub. So that's kind of my pep talk at the start out of the way. Now we can get to the nonsense talk. So friends are asking me how's this going to work, and I'm not really sure myself, so we're kind of doing this on the fly. But the general idea is kind of to have interactive images that I can kind of talk over. And it's just a way for us kind of to congregate together. We're lucky enough to live in a house where there's 4 or 5 of us where we can have a drink in the kitchen, but others just 2 people, or you might be on your own. So we thought it might be a nice way of kind of everybody getting together for a drink and having a chat. So we can't all have our mics on. So the text chat will have to do on the right hand side. So I'm going to guide you around the pub this evening, telling you what I know about its history, what my feelings and memories are of the place. We bring people there on pub crawls with my friend and partner, business partner, Lishuk. So basically, it's kind of me talking at you for however long this lasts. So kind of a more accurate name of it might be the Dublin Pub Barfly Simulator 2020. So in a minute, I'm going to reveal the exterior of our pub. We go inside and have a good route around using their 360 photos. The original intention was to go on a bit of a tour of Dublin pubs, but it actually turns out that not as many of them have as 360 photos or virtual tours as you'd imagine. I took photos a while back, but I can't find them, or else I didn't take as many as I thought I did. So I'm going to do my best to tell you a bit of history about these places without boring the arse off you, and I'd be really grateful if you're to share your own stories and impressions of the pubs. I'm really happy to take questions you might have as well. I can't keep too much of an eye on the chat because I want to keep talking and not have dead airspace, so I might rely on my acolytes in the room. I might point at one of them and they might send me a question from the chat. They don't have to come up with their own questions if they're too brain dead for that. They've only just started drinking though, so it's grand. So the plan is also to do a little bit of a pub quiz along the way and test your local pub knowledge. So it's a pub quiz, but it's also about pubs. The people in the room here with me are not allowed to take part because they assisted me while drinking in the kitchen a few nights ago, coming up with a few topics. If anybody knows pubs related to fruit and veg, we can only come up with 3. There must be more. And they're all fruit, but fruit and veg sounds better. So they were Lemon and Duke, the Hairy Lemon, and the Ginger Man. If anybody's got any more than that, I'd love to hear some. If you see any in the chat, will you send it on to me? Thanks very much. So tonight I'm going to drink local Irish beer because it's more important than ever to try and support the local economy. Keep the pubs going when they open, keep the local breweries going as well. So I'm not going to tell you what to do for the rest of it now. I'm just going to lift the veil on our first pub. Bang. Okay, what you should be seeing here is a very glamorous portrait of a pub on Georgia Street that's close to the hearts of many people. It is, of course, the Long Hall on Georgia Street. Right. So as you can see, right here, there's 2 lovely looking wheelie bins outside. They're not a permanent fixture. They just happen to be on the street when they're doing the Google photos. Georgia Street has never looked worse, actually, when they're taking these photos. There's a chalk bus lane writing on the ground there. But it is a lovely vista of the Long Hall. Somebody asked before, why do they have that kind of red and white barbershop canopy? So I asked Marcus Houlihan, the owner, and he didn't get back to me. So that's that anecdote over. But I do have, it's good to have a studio audience here. But I do have a story about the origins of the name of the pub. So I think, most of the pubs in Dublin and in Ireland, we follow the convention of pubs being named after the owner. So it's all Ryans, Walsh's, and such. But the Long Hall is named not because of the part that we can see today, which is obviously kind of long and hallish, you might say. But it's more for, there was an area on the right hand side. See the door here on the right? That leads up to an apartment these days, but that used to be a separate entrance to the pub. So a lot of pubs had snugs, and this was kind of an equivalent to a snug in the Long Hall. So this door opened up, and there was, I'm going to say the words long hall quite a lot during this, but there was a long hallway running for the most part behind the bar and for the most of the pub. And there was a hatch in there similar to the way that there is at a snug, and you would get served. And I've seen a sketch of this from an old regular who remembers it before it was turned into a staircase up to the apartments, and it looked reasonably grim, if I'm honest, because you kind of just sit there on a bench facing the wall and have a good old stare at the wall while you're drinking your pint. But that's how it was, I suppose. You just sit there in misery, just having a pint and looking at stuff rather than having a chat. So this would have been, like much like the Victorian era snugs. It's kind of a place where you'd go if you didn't really want to be bumping into people, or if you're a member of society. Say in the Victorian era, if you're a woman, you'd come in here and have a drink because this is the place for gentlemen to drink and such. Or if you're a woman, you'd come in here and they might be selling tea leaves, spices, all that kind of stuff. So you'd do your shop, but you'd also have a gin and tonic as you waited for the order to be filled. So that's the outside of the building. Okay, let me scroll down here. We're relying on what's his name now, the healing machine, who was good enough to take 360-degree photos of this pub that we're now using today. I think somebody else has taken some as well, so we'll give them credit where it's due. Toilets are for customers' use only, as you can see, so you have to buy a pint. So if you wouldn't mind lining up outside here digitally as well, and I will check your IDs as you come in. Grand. Excuse Warren, what's your date of birth?
3rd of the 6th, 1988.
Right, and what's your PPS number?
I'd rather not say.
Grand, we'll leave that so. Alright, so let's have a look inside then. Hold on, we can just click and then we go. You know how these things work, really. And we're inside. What a lovely looking pub it is. Very red. This is all the description you're going to get from me. So the pub itself is 254 years old. So that would make it a quarter of a millennium, or over a quarter of a millennium old. It would be one of the older ones in Dublin. I suppose the Brazen Head is obviously kind of the one that can make the claim to being the oldest in Dublin, at least, going back to 12 something or other. I think like they have a legitimate claim on going back to 1650 or so, but that's all as far back as anybody can claim, really, because that's when kind of records began for pub licenses and such. Feel free to correct me in the comments here or tell me I know nothing. But the Brazen Head make a claim on it being, there being a coach house on the site, and there's several pubs that have that claim as well, on the site that they're on now, or kind of in the locality, and that's fair enough, I think. Up the road is the Swan, on Ainger Street. They were established 1661, so a good bit before the Long Hall, in fact. And they date back to the time that Ainger Street was first established. It was on the estate of Sir Francis Ainger. There you are. There's one you can tell your mates. Fascinating facts. So one thing that links the Swan that I was talking about there and the Long Hall, they're both quite old, but they're kind of both recognised today, or their distinguishing characteristic is that they're both Victorian era pubs. So they date back from the Victorian eras, which would be, don't give me don't ask me for an exact start date, but it's like 1880 to 1904. So these pubs would have undergone a renovation around that time, in a Victorian style. So that would include a snug, dividers, mahogany wood bar, chandeliers. The Long Hall is kind of a bit more ornate than the other Victorian era pubs. Can you guess what the 16 are? We did this the other night. So the Swan and the Long Hall are some of them. There's a few on Bagot Street. There's one on Dame Lane. There's a few outside of the city as well. I might catch my breath and give you a chance to answer that, and I'll have a look in the comments whether you're getting it or not. There's an awful lot of chatter from people I know. I can see here. Any slagging of me yet? No, they're just chatting amongst themselves. That's pretty good, actually. Anybody who isn't an immediate friend of mine, would they care to ask a question? No, just scrolling through this, I know all of these people. Okay, that's grand. Right, so some of the Victorian era pubs, I'll go through them. Stag's Head, Doheny and Nesbitt's, Toners. We did this the other night, so I should know them. The Hut in Phibsborough, Finnegan's in Dalkey. Oh God. O'Neill's Pier Street is one. Gaffney's in Fairview. I can just read the comments now as they pop up. So that's only a few of them, really. The Oval, I think that's one of them. The Norseman in Temple Bar. Oh, I've just been called a big twat. This is so hurtful, Aidan. Why Ryan's on Parkgate Street. That's one of them. Thanks very much, Leisha, for your support. Unlike some other people, the public are watching. For God's sake, what will they think of us? Okay, so I'm gonna turn around me here. We'll do a bit of pivoting, bit of swiveling. So there's one mirror here, and there's another one a little bit further up. That's Power's whiskey mirror. But it's kind of cut out of the wall, so it looks like there's a little shrine created to whiskey. Below it, there's also a phone. There's not many of those left in pubs. The Swan up the road, they have one as well, and it's working. I doubt this one's working, but you can put 20p in it if you can find the old 20p with the horse and stick that in and see if it works. So on the 250th anniversary of the long haul, they had a bit of a shindig. I happened to be invited. I was delighted to go. I brought somebody who's commenting in the comments now. So we drank some nice free whiskey, some of which included a special blend by Powers. So for the 250th anniversary of the long haul, Powers got the master distiller in, a master blender in, and he created a special blend just for the long haul. So they made one barrel of this. So the yield from a barrel can vary depending on how much is evaporated, the Angel's share. And it just so happened that the bottle yield from that barrel was 252 bottles. So that's one for every year of the pub, plus 2 for opening on the celebration night. So there you go. So the long haul has pre-exists Powers, Jameson, just about every other drinks company, with the exception of Guinness. Guinness was open a little while before that. So you could say that the long haul has been, pouring these whiskies and other drinks for as long as they've been opened. Marcus Houlihan, who's the current owner, he estimated that they've poured something like 14 million pints of Guinness in the 250. Well, that was when it was 250 years, so there might be another 500,000 in there. So do the maths. I haven't. This is a poster of pubs. I have this upstairs somewhere, but I can't find it. These are 2 mirrors that confuse me, because why not make just one big mirror? But it's nice. It's a nice pattern. So on the right here as well is one of these dividers. In other pubs, they're usually just kind of one whole wooden piece, but this, because it's the long haul, it's a lot more ornate. You've got the stained glass piece here, the mirror there, so you can check yourself out while avoiding people on the other side of it, and the nice gold etching as well. So this is the part of the bar, as far as I know, where Bruce Springsteen usually sits and has a drink when he comes and does a gig in town. I think he's come the last 3 times he's been in, and they've got a good selection of whiskey in the bar, including their own long haul whiskey, and they actually have a special private bottle for Bruce Springsteen, so he can come in and just have a nip. Although I think I saw them tweeting saying, "I'm having a nip from this bottle in your honor, Bruce." I don't know if that works. I really like this area over here because it's kind of a good people watching spot. I like the long haul as kind of a nice day drinking place. It can get busy in the evening, which is grand, but I like just sitting in here during the day. So just saw a funny comment there, but relating to my past. I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to look up. So there's loads of chandeliers in this pub. Stop laughing at me and start laughing with me. So there's loads of chandeliers in this pub. There's one. If I scroll over, there's more. There's loads. But do you notice anything about them? They're all different. So I've got a good reason for why they're all different. But this is first pointed out when I was on a tour here with a pub historian called Kevin Martin. Really nice chap. He's got a good book out. I did the photos for it. The photos are grand. But yeah, so they're all different, and this is down to one of the previous owners. So I'm going to scroll on. Actually, no, I'll leave that as like a cliffhanger while we do something else, because I've got something in my notes that I want to do. Okay, yeah, so we're going to do a first little trivia round. So I'm going to get my phone out here and prepare for some dead air as I wait for your answers, and I'll help you along with some of them. And my studio audience here might get on the act as well and help you along if you can't think of any of them. So as you say the answers, I'll just try and blurt out a factoid about them or something like that. My WhatsApp's going wild with my friends here who are watching it, slagging me. Okay, so a bit of pub trivia. So we're going to do kind kind of pub naming convention. So all of the answers are going to be within the city centre limits, which is what I consider to be kind of canal to canal, roughly. So kind of down as far as Park 8th Street, up to the canal before Rathmines, Ranelagh, and let's say kind of as far. I don't include or Drumcondra in it. We'll stop it there. Yeah, roughly. You know what I'm saying. So how many pubs? I think I can get 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Can you name 11 pubs in Dublin that have an animal in their name? So I'm going to sit here pensively watching the comments, see if you get it. And also belch, because I've just been drinking a gassy beer. Pardon? Okay, there's quite a big delay, so I might be waiting. But I'm here to waste people's time. Like, what are you doing after this? Nothing. I'll wait. So can you. I'll open the scampi fries then. I'll describe the aromas to you since you don't have it at home. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Boar's Head, Wiley Fox, that's correct. Wiley Fox, formerly known as the Pint. That's my fact about it. Stag's Head, that's correct. Bleeding Horse. Stag's Head, Bleeding Horse, yeah, we've had that. Stag's Head, another Victorian era pub. Wiley Fox. Black Lion is not in the city centre. The Swan, that is correct. Thank you, Adam. You want to get a bit of the sound of that in. The Lucky Duck, that's correct. Stag's Head, Boar's Head. Bull and Castle, yes. Elephant Castle, no. That's where they sell chicken wings. It's a restaurant. Black Sheep is correct. Swan, we've had this. Thanks for contributing though, Kate. Kate Mariana, all three is. Black Sheep, we've had that. Thank you, Dave. Let me have a look at my list, see what you're missing. I'll try and maybe I'll do an impersonation, or is that a step too far? The Aardvark's Head, that hasn't been open in years, mate. You know it. So there's one that is a type of ape, primate, monkey. Wild duck, yes. Excuse me. One is a bird. Sorry, two are birds. ASMR crisp noises, that's correct. I love to eat my crisps in front of an audience. Woolshed's a bit of a stretch. It's not my 11, but played the Black Line. In my opinion, it's not city centre. Bonobo's correct. Well done, Mrs. Beetle Geek. Let me see. What have we got left? The Duke. So if you say it in a French accent, it sounds like duck. That's almost correct. It's a good effort. So I'm looking for two that are the names of birds. One of them is a very professional bird. Legal Eagle, that's right. Well done. The Deer Head, I didn't actually think of that one. Is that? No, that's closed now. That's Mimaz or Mimaz. Have we got one left? Yes. So we've got one left. It's in the Temple Bar area. Bald Eagle. Is that between the canals? I suppose you're right, in fairness, aren't you? Use a tissue, throw it away. You know the story. Where's Bonobo? Bonobo is what's that street called? It's around the corner from the tap, or the tap room 47 as it is now. Legal Eagle, well done. Thank you, Anita. Fair play to you. Did we already have that? I apologize for wasting your time. Okay. So we're gonna move on. Oh, hold on. I forgot one critical thing. Where are we now? I'm just going to move back up here slightly. Sorry, that's what I was looking for. Yes, crowbar. Well done. Mrs. Beetlegeek, you got two. Okay, so I wanted to... Sorry, here's another Powers mirror here, and it's got one of those heat lamps on it. Have you ever stood under a heat lamp like that in like Fallon's or the back of the palace, it will roast the scalp off your head. I'm sure they're very welcome things, or were very welcome things when they're installed, and they do get the pub nice and toasty. But have you ever stood under them? Anyway, so I want to draw your attention to these two things here on the wall. So these are both reasonably recent in the scheme of the pub. It's 253 years ago, or years old. But this is like a James Joyce Award. I think these were doing the rounds in like late 90s, early 2000s. So you might have kind of seen them around the pubs. By the way, what I'm about to say about this is not total fact. This is kind of what I remember hearing about these. But you'd think like, oh, this has a James Joyce Award because it was mentioned by James Joyce or he drank there. But in fact, I'm pretty sure it was just a guy selling these awards to people, or maybe they were attributed, but it's nothing to do with James Joyce. It's just like James Joyce is a stand-up guy. His face means quality, so we're gonna give pubs an award to signify that James Joyce, would have liked it. So we've just had our second Guinness carpet fatality of the night, both coming from Warren. Sorry, Warren, to out you. So above the James Joyce Award, you've made a fool of yourself. Above the James Joyce Award is a little framed caricature, and we can't quite see it here, but that's in reference to Asterix the Gaul. There's a picture of the Long Hall and a guy just above it, and I think they've kind of given him like an Asterix type name. Alternative facts, thank you, Dave. There's a delay, it means nothing now. But yeah, the Asterix the Gaul Irish Appreciation Society meet in the Long Hall. I don't know how regularly they meet, but apparently they've got like a few of the copies of Asterix the Gaul in behind the bar. I don't know if any of you read it in your childhood, but I read them in English. Friend read them in French. They've been translated, some of them into Irish as well, so there's kind of clever wordplay with it. So I wonder if they've got a copy in Irish. But anyway, those guys meet here. I don't know if they kind of just talk about Asterix all of the time, or it's just kind of a shared common interest. Anyway, moving on. So I'm going to move slightly up here, and then I'm going to turn my gaze back. Getting a lot of mileage out of these 360 photos. So does anybody know who sat at, let's say, I think this stool here, famously and on film? It was, I'm not going to wait for your answer because it's too much of a delay, but it was Phil Lynott in his video for Old Town. Phil Lynott, of course, being the frontman of Thin Lizzy. He had a song, Old Town, which was kind of like a love letter to Dublin. And in it, he kind of used a few iconic Irish and Dublin locations. So some of which were Herbert Park, the bandstand there, the Dublin Docks before they got, IFSC'd, and the Halfpenny Bridge, and the pub that he chose to represent, the pub to beat all pubs, was the Long Hall. Let me see if I can flick over to the tab. I think I have it here. Load up. Yeah, there he is. So he's in behind just the partition. Do they still have those taps? They don't. Oh no, they do. They do. Yeah, so he filmed it here. I'm not going to play the music for you. You can go look for it yourself. But he's just in behind the partition, the photographer is. Val, the old manager here, he retired last year after 40 years. He was working the day, I think he was like a junior member of staff at the time, and he was working during the day, and apparently Philo turned up late, but was really nice to him as well, being a junior barman in there at the time. So that's two famous musicians. Oh, I completely forgot to put on the Irish pub environmental sound. There we go. Okay, hopefully I'll just put this down a bit so you can definitely hear me over it. That was an integral part of my plans. Oh well. There we go. So now it sounds a bit more like a pub. I have it on the loop. Don't worry. This is actually, somebody went to the trouble of taking environmental sounds from O'Donoghue's on Merrion Row. There. Now, so we're back to Long Hall. So I was going to tell you about why there's all these antique chandeliers and such. So let me turn around and I'll point you to a name. So on this partition here is a clock. I think possibly made by a company in Temple Bar. But there's also the initials POB. So this was the prior publican to the Houlihan family who own it now. His name's Patrick O'Brien. He would have bought the pub in around 1940, so he was kind of publican custodian from 1940 to 1972. He was an antique collector. So you can see videos from the pub back in the 50s and 60s where the pub is chock full of all these antiques. In the front window there's loads of kind of like bronze and plates and all sorts of stuff, and there was loads upstairs. He actually lived upstairs, which is really common for publicans and their families to live above the pub that they owned and operated. So he used to have a person come in every week to clean everything in the pub, all the antiques, upstairs and down. So he probably got these chandeliers from all around Europe. There's a notice in the Irish Times. I'm just going to turn that noise down, actually. It's a bit loud in this pub. There you are. It's a nice soft murmur in the background. Where was I now? So the chandeliers here, if you look at what's going around them there, it's all fruit. So it's like apples and oranges and bananas and pears and such. A few of which would have been, I suppose, like hard to get back in the day, so it would have been a bit exotic. My dad was born 1940, so the first birthday he had after the Second World War finished, one of his birthday presents from my granddad was oranges that he managed to get in Belfast. And that was the first time he saw that kind of fruit. There you are. So yeah, Patrick F. O'Brien, he sold the pub, he passed away, I should say, in 1971, and the pub was sold at auction in 1972, and it was bought by the Houlihan family, who still own it today. So they bought it for £40,000. Just heard a clatter there, nobody cheered, so I don't think it was a smashed glass, it was just a bottle dropping. Anyway, he sold it, or it was sold for £40,000 to the Houlihan family. And the Houlihan family also bought £10,000 worth of the antiques. And if you compare what it's like now to even some of the videos from the 50s and 60s, this seems to have been kind of a fraction of the antiques that were in the pub at one time. So I've deduced anyway that the antiques were actually possibly worth more than the pub. You know, and this is 72, so the pub would have still been a really viable going concern. You know, at the time it was over 200 years old, it was profitable. So it says a lot about him and the antique collection that he managed to get. He put the pub up for temporary lease in 1945 or so. So we kind of gathered from that after the Second World War he was free to travel around Europe again and see what he could find in terms of antiques. Let's see now. We go for another trivia. I think we will, so I don't have to talk as much and I can just sip on my beer a little bit. So again, actually I should thank Warren, Brian, Lydia and Morgan for helping me come up with some of the answers for this. It passed a good hour the other night. If you have any ideas for more, we'd be grateful. It might pass the time a bit better. So, bearing in mind, between the canals, Dublin City Centre, can you think of pubs whose names relate to royalty or nobility, or where they might reside? Okay, I'm going to have a little drink. Alright, the average watch time of this is 7 minutes and 24 seconds, so that's decent enough for me. People are able to tolerate it for a bit, come in, see it's alright. They're more kind of coming in having a shot, or like a very quick half pint, than sticking with us for the full pint, but that's fine. I'm not to everybody's tastes. Okay, we got some answers here. The Duke, that is correct. The Palace, that is also correct. The Royal Oak, not quite city centre, but you know, why not? Lord Edward, that is correct. Bullen Castle, yes. King's Inn, yes. Coming thick and fast here. Boar's Head, I suppose he killed Robert Baratheon in Game of Thrones. That's what you're going for there, isn't it? Spoiler for the first series of Game of Thrones. You're not going back to it. We've got some trivia here. Oh, Lemon and Duke. That's correct. That's correct. 7 minutes is plenty of time for a pint. That's right, Dave. That is the length of time it will take to drink a pint once this is all over. We're going to go in and absolutely horse them down. Sensibly. Drinking sensibly, of course. Okay, let me see if I can give you a little clue. Think Irish royalty. We don't have many of them. And do we have any others? What did we had? Lord Edward, King's Inn, the Duke, the Palace. Ooh, the Wellington. Yeah, he's a Duke, I suppose. Okay, all right. Thanks, Carl. Oh, sorry for breaking that Robert Baratheon thing. Anyway, let's see now. What else we got? Oh yeah, sure. There's one on Abbey Street. What's the Abbey Street one? Think back to a previous answer. Brian Baru. Well done, Eddie. Eddie Bohan's here. Eddie Bohan has a book coming out about the Stag's Head, and he's written loads of good stuff about 1916 and as it relates to pubs. Christine's late with also Brian Baru, but in fairness to her, she has a dog called Baru. So, sorry, Eddie Bohan. Christine takes the points for that one. The Quill. That's more something royalty might write with to condemn somebody to death. Royal Oak. Gin Palace. Mark O'Neill has it. Fair play to you. And I think that might be the lot for that. Okay, so I have this book that... Who gave this to me? I think my uncle gave this to me 2011 or something, and I love it. It's called Roy Bulson's Irish Pubs of Character, and it's published in 1969. You might have seen it before. If you're going through actually reeling in the years at the moment, there's links going around with all of the episodes of Reeling in the Years. He actually features in an episode of it. I'd say when this book came out, he's on the promo tour or something, and he's on some kind of equivalent of Nationwide, but for nightlife or something, and he's kind of talking about the quality of Irish pubs and how much crack they are, and he's kind of comparing them to pubs in the UK, and he's saying Irish pubs are just wonderful, the music, the fun, the conversation, but the state of the jacks in them. So he's kind of going off on one about how awful they are, and they only really cured that about 10 years ago in Irish pubs. Anyway, so I wanted to read you the little entry he has on the long haul. In each of them, he does just a little bit about the pubs of the day. He tells you what's on draft and what the food available is, and the phone number. I'm even going to read the phone number because I'm trying to kill time here now. The Long Hall Bar is one of Dublin's oldest and most attractive pubs, well worth a visit. It is one of the best collections of antique glass and paintings to be seen in any pub. It is full of characters and is over 200 years old, still maintaining a genuine atmosphere. I suppose it's not really changed that much, but original paintings by Jack Yates can be seen by the light of interesting varied crystal chandeliers. I pointed out the chandeliers, did I not? One of the few remaining pendulum clocks can also be seen behind the bar. I haven't pointed that out yet. At the rear of the main bar, there's a small, comfortable lounge. And on the right-hand side, running parallel again to the main bar, is a most unusual, attractive mahogany long hall, from which the pub obtains its name. Television available in lounge bar. That it is. On draft were Guinness, Smithwick's, Phoenix, Celebration, Carling. Carling is everywhere in 1969 in Dublin for some reason, and Harp. Excellent range of sandwiches and rolls available. So Long Hall's actually gone back a little bit in those terms, but we won't hold it against them. Telephone number had 5 digits, 51590. Patrick F. O'Brien, proprietor. Okay, let's go back to our little map thingy, our little 360 photo. So we're going to go through the keyhole. So you can see there's there's a few of the antiques still up on the wall, including along with a few kind of modern advertising things like this Pilsner Urquell and Carrick Brewing thing. So all of the sketches or paintings here on the wall seem to be part of a set. They've got muskets on the wall as well. Pretty new Bailey's mirror. Bailey's came out in the 70s. And there's the pendulum clock that your man was talking about. Anybody know what this yoke is? I had to ask several people before I got an acceptable answer. So what I had come up with was it's some kind of bedpan, but you wouldn't really want to put that up on the wall, even if it's been quite a while since it's been used. I thought it might have been, what's one of those? You know, when you're in mass and somebody's going around collecting the money, but they don't trust you enough to pass the basket around. So you put the cash in that, but it's actually for putting fire in, or sorry, for putting like hot coals in and then sticking under a bed to keep your arse warm at night. So there's the telly. A lot of the time you never see it actually open. They only put it on for like rugby matches, football matches, stuff like that. I'm also quite glad that they have air conditioning here in this pub because I'm a warm man. If the lighting was any better on this, you'd be able to see my red cheeks, but they might be standing out from the darkness. Geez, we've been going for 40 minutes. Anyway, it's a little just telling you how much of your life you've currently wasted this evening with me. I'm just going to check the chat because I want to see if Eddie Bohan got back to say hello. Oh yeah, also, one thing I wanted to bring up is, so we can't go to the pub at the moment, but there's some people who have a bit of an advantage over the rest of us. A few people have home bars, and I wanted to show you one particular home bar. There's a guy called All Things Guinness on Instagram, and I'm glowing. Thank you very much. So he's got an Instagram page called All Things Guinness, where he's a Guinness fan and he posts about pints he has, but he's also got loads of paraphernalia and stuff. O'Brien has decided to join us. Was I too boring for you, Brian? Good God, he's eating. Okay, grand, fair enough.
By the way, All Things Guinness
Oh, they're having a pint. Oh, brilliant. All Things Guinness already commented to say hello. That's wonderful. Hello. I don't know your real name. Hey guys, I'm here. Yes, good man yourself. We'll have a pint after this. Anyway, I wanted to show people your home bar then. Let's have a look. So we've got cans in the sitting room. I want to show you what he's got. This lovely setup. Shared this the other day. So he's got all of his Guinness paraphernalia. He's got a nice kind of wooden bar top. I don't know if that was salvaged. He's got like a little Guinness keglet, you might call it. He's got like a modern Guinness tap. And then also, you know those, well, you can see it here in front of you, but like those Guinness kind of box taps that they installed a few years ago that look retro and kind of look like they've been there all along, but they haven't been. So he's trying to get his hands on one, and he couldn't. So he built one himself with his bare hands. So he, unlike the rest of us, has Guinness on tap. It's lovely. It's nice and small. One sec, hold on. Some guy commented here as well saying, "Look at mine," and it was actually really good. Check mine out. DB Whiskey in the US. There's loads of glassware there as well. There's a dog with Guinness. Where is you? There. So this guy's got a pretty good bar setup as well. This is kind of like, you know, it's like the Hairy Lemon or something, where there's all the badges from policemen across the US and all that kind of stuff. He's got it lit up for Paddy's Day. This is pretty sweet. I wish I had that, but I've got cans in the fridge. So back to the long haul again. So obviously we're inside a pub, and there's only kind of so much you can talk about unless you do. Oh no, wait, excuse me. There's another thing I can talk about. You might think this doesn't look like the long haul at all. That's the carpet, all right. But this is not the seating arrangement. And you're right. I don't know when this photo was taken, but I don't really remember the long hall like this. It looks like kind of the back of Bewley's with the seating, because I'm so used to what it used to be. But it's all kind of red leather couches around the side of it now. There might actually be a 360 here that I took. Not that one. Yeah, it's a bit dark. It's very dark. But this is what it looks like now. Like you can imagine Morpheus from the Matrix there sitting on that one. Nice dark reds. But go back to what we're looking at before. Let's go to this one. Turn around, turn around. So it's it's a bit like Bewley's. It looks kind of uncomfortable. Although obviously it was quite comfortable because people, the long hauls had the reputation it has back to when this furniture was around. Anyway, as I was saying before, I interrupted myself. So there's only so much you can talk about one particular pub, but there's kind of one story I wanted to share with you if you hadn't already heard it, and wanted to update you on it. He's having a pint in his home as he's watching it. This is wonderful. This is a story I wanted to update you about, which is a guy called Yuya RB from Japan. If you're not familiar with his story, he's a Japanese guy who was over here. I think he left maybe a year and a half ago or so. But he came over to study, to learn English and to work a bit. But he worked in an Irish bar when he was in Japan, and he's kind of like all things Guinness. He's a fan of that brewery, of that beer, and of Irish pubs in general. So when he came over here, he knew he was going to be here for 2 years. That's how long his visa was. So he set himself the target of visiting every single last pub in Dublin city and county. So what he did was he got a book by the name of Mac Maloney's Pub Spotter's Guide. He set off. He would go to a pub. He would order a Guinness. He would have to have a Guinness in each one, and he would get the barman to sign the book for him as proof that he'd been there. So he started to do this around town, and then he got to something like Pub 200, and he started to pop up on like social network feeds. A friend of mine sent me a photo of him in Smiths of Haddington Road having his pint, and he was on like Pub 200, 250 there, and people kind of started to take notice. So I did an article on it, and then it was kind of picked up by some national media just as a passing story. And once you got to 200, 250, it didn't seem like a fanciful thing to do or something to try. I think the fact that he's from Japan as well kind of got the public behind him a bit more, so that people didn't think he's just some fella who likes to booze. He was actually doing this because he loved Ireland. We think we embrace outsiders a bit more like that. So gradually he kind of built it up. I bumped into him when we were on a pub crawl once actually, and he showed me his book, and it was in it was near tatters because he'd just been bringing it around. He brought it around to something like 765 pubs, getting it signed by barmen, kind of being passed around. Anyway, to cut a long story short, he managed to make it to every single pub in Dublin. The very first people, to my knowledge, who have ever achieved it. So he made it to 765 pubs, and he only made it to the last one, the Lodge, or Kavanagh's in Laura Lodge, Castleknock, the night before he was due to fly home. That was the pub that his English teacher used to drink in, so they had a pint there, crossed it off the list, and then he was off back to Japan. So I've chatted to him every now and then on Facebook, and he's doing well, and he's working in an Irish pub abroad. So we'll an Irish pub in Japan. We'll have to do a fun. He'll have to do a fundraiser for him to get him a plaque in a pub or something. It's just a nice story that I like to reminisce about. So he visited every pub in Dublin, and there's another guy who did kind of the opposite, where he tried to avoid every single pub on the island of Ireland. His name's David Blackmore. He's a photographer. He did this, I want to say, 2012-ish. So his idea was to walk from Mallinhead to Mizenhead without passing a single pub. So the internet would have been of some help back then, but there's probably a lot of black spots, especially in rural Ireland when it comes to pubs. So he planned it out as much as he could, and he was on foot as well. So he planned it out, but frequently he would come across a pub, or he'd come across a person telling him there's a pub up the road. On one occasion he had to turn back for 15 kilometers. Sounds like he prepared reasonably well in terms of supplies, but he got sick loads along the way. He was sleeping in tents in field, after asking for permission. If any of you go to the Lord Edward, upstairs, there's a barman named Tommy, And Tommy joined David Blackmore for I think a day or two of this, and walked along with him because his son, who's also a photographer, was pals with him. Um, so he eventually made it from one end of Ireland to the other, but it took him 28 days, and I'd say his health suffered a little bit, and he probably had a few pairs of shoes that he'd gone through. But being a photographer, he took snaps all along the way, and he had an exhibition on Pearse Street afterwards, so it was kind of all worth it. And he's lecturing in London now, as far as I know. So they're my two stories about either going to the pub or avoiding the pub. Okay, so I've got another trivia thing, don't I? I'm checking my notes. I'll pick one out of here. Oh yeah, okay. Here's a good one. Here's an alright one, depending on how it goes. Can you name the 6 pubs in Dublin city centre that end in Gans? Gans. There's 6 of them. I think some of them will, come to you quite quickly, and then others perhaps not. Go. I'm gonna have a sip. I'm grand. I've loads of this. I can't drink it quickly enough. Come on, chat, catch up. Mulligans, correct. Brogans, Hogans, Grogans. Madigans, I didn't even think of that. Fair play. Flanagan's more of a restaurant. Brannigan's, Hartigans. I didn't think of that either. Hurricanes is closed. Dishikafigans. Now, what's the other one? Oh yeah. Cangans. That is sort of right. What was the question? Pubs that end in Gans. There's only one more to go, I think. Well, I mean, you've got 8 out of a 6. Madigans, yes, fair play. Morgan Freeman's. That doesn't even end in Gans. Somebody's just texted me to say there are 4 Madigans. That's correct, but come on, I'm only gonna take one. This is thrown together. Not everything has to be correct. I'm here to waste an hour of your life and mine. Okay, so the last one is kind of people would go to it. Becky Morgan's, yes, Eddie Bohan's in again. There is no prizes. I would like to say there are no prizes for this whatsoever. Slogans. Okay. Alright, folks, I think I've spoken for long enough. That's 52 minutes. That's all I really aspired to do. Has anybody got any questions I can talk shite about? Give me a question or I'm going. Alright, I'm sitting here drinking with these people. You demand prizes? Well, no. The prize is my company. Pack of Scampi fries. We'll give you a pack of Scampi fries. Somebody's only just started drinking and asked to go past an hour. That's up to you now, folks. Shenanigans. We're past that. We're on to questions. What is my favourite bar snack? Black Manhattan crisps. These are pretty good. What's the worst pub in Dublin? Alright, I'm not going to name it. But it doesn't exist anymore anyway, so it's grand. But there was... no, Long Hall's lovely. There was a pub... so Publin started originally as... Sorry, while I'm answering this, can you take note of any decent questions if they come up? There was a pub... when I started Publin, initially it was like a price guide. So it was like I'd get the price for Guinness, Heineken, Carlsberg, whiskey, vodka, and a mixer. And I did this by walking around to every single pub in Dublin. And I went into this pub that was a bit rough. Like I didn't know anything about pubs when I started it really, and it was a bit rough, but grand. And I went in, asked to speak to the manager, and somebody was kind of pointed over to a seat over there, and your man just didn't want to know. But he said he's like humouring me and kind of take the piss out of me as well, of course. But I told him what I was doing. He said, "This is gonna cost me money," and I said, "No. Hopefully, get your money." So I sat down, and this is not a good story. I've just realised. But anyway, I started asking what's the price of Guinness? It's £4 or £3.50 for pensioners, and then Carlsberg and Heineken and so on. And then I got to another thing on the list, and I said, "How much is your quarter bottle of wine?" And he just pissed himself laughing, and I didn't go back in, obviously. So it's not the worst pub in Dublin, but that's what comes to mind. Good question here from Rob Malumbi. Have you ever had a dream that you had, you could, you'll do, you want, you could, you'll do, you could, you want them to do so much you could do anything? What's with the get up? I've gone for kind of a cardi kind of sweater type thing. Who's your favourite pint man? No memes, please. How long is this story gonna be? Well, it's finished now. Yeah, the background noise is good. It's them just moving plates around and kind of clanging pints and stuff and kind of having fake conversations. Which pub is it? Good question. I think that's like a question everybody has, is which pub you're going to visit after the lockdown. Answers in the chat, please. What's the best pub to get shot to bits in? What pub we're going to visit afterwards? God, I don't know. It'll be like a gradual thing where they're opened up gradually, I'd assume, so it has to be a small one, or does it have to be a big one? I don't play favourites, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, here's a fact from Eddie Bowen. I don't know if this is Eddie's website or another one. There's a pub or a website called Dying for a Pint where they've catalogued all of the deaths in pubs, like going back like hundreds of years. So Eddie says, did you know, you can read this as well, what am I reading it to? Did you know the most fatal day of the week to be in a pub is a Thursday? 32% of all killings in a public house have happened on a Thursday, mainly because it's a fair day in rural Ireland of old. Well, it's a Saturday now, so we're all safe. Can we do this again next week? Yeah, cool. We might. Do you want to do it earlier, or do you want to do it later? I'm just hanging in to kind of reach that hour mark just to satisfy Dorset Bows. Slattery's Rathmines will be my first pint. That's a nice one. Alright, okay. I think I'm going to wrap it up here and have pay attention to my housemates here, because they're just dying for a drink with me and like a real chat. So my greatest hope and my greatest fear is that I hope that when I press end stream that this stops streaming, and my greatest fear is that it continues to stream for whenever I use this laptop. And sorry, I'm looking over here, and that I'm just surfing the web and everything comes up live on YouTube. All right, so here's hoping. Thanks a million for coming. Thanks to Laura for suggesting we do this. It's good crack. Yeah, we might do it again next week. We had a whopping 60 people, so this is my income for the 65. Excuse me. We just picked up a few towards the end. Maybe we'll stay on. Oh yeah, God yeah.